I am Arnold Schwarzenegger. Ask me anything. Former Mr. Olympia, Conan, Terminator, and Governor of California. I killed the Predator. Is there any director or actor you wanted to work with but didn't/haven't yet? I would like to work with Michael Bay and Steven Spielberg. Also Sam Raimi would be great to work with. How often do you still speak German? After all the years in the USA, do you feel more comfortable to speak English? Not much. I'm definitely more comfortable in English, which should tell you how bad my German's gotten. What are your thoughts on the current state of the Republican Party? The most important thing is that we need to be a party that is inclusive and tolerant. We can be those things and be the party we've always been. We need to think about the environment. Teddy Roosevelt was a great environmentalist, and people forgot Reagan was the one who dealt with the ozone layer with the Montreal Protocol. We also need to talk about healthcare, honestly. Nixon almost passed universal healthcare. We need to have a talk about immigration and realize you can't just deport people. We need a comprehensive answer. We also need to stay out of people's bedrooms. The party that's for small government shouldn't be overreaching into people's private lives. Mainly, we need to be a party where people know what we're for, not just what we're against. Politicians are widely unpopular these days. If you had to pick one current American politician who best embodies what is good about politics, who would you pick and why? I've always appreciated your perspective on American politics and admired your optimistic spirit, so I'd love to hear the answer to this. Thanks. Great question. Even though Congress has an approval rating of 9% and loses to cockroaches and colonoscopies and bowling, there are still some leaders who are doing the people's work instead of the party's work. That's political courage to me, being willing to risk your job to choose what's good for the public instead of getting stuck in your ideology. One of my favorites is Mayor Chuck Reed from San Jose. He's a Democratic who took on pension reform. He's always put the people first. You should look him up. In your films, are all the ayags in the script, or do you improvise them? All improvised. Every single one. Dear Mr. Schwarzenegger, I'm a huge fan of yours. My question is merely this. Was "Get to the Choppa" in the script, or did you ad-lib that? Also, you're famous for the classic one-liners like "stick around," etc. Did you ever write any of these, or are these all in the script? Much love from the UK. Get to the Choppa was in the script. Stick around was ad-lib, as are some of the more wild one-liners. If you had to pick your favorite line from any movie, what would it be? From someone else's movie, "Do I feel lucky? Well, do ya, punk?" From my movies, "I'll be back." In the Pumping Iron documentary, you mentioned that you once deliberately trained a fellow bodybuilder wrong just before a competition in Austria. You told him that the latest thing in posing over in America was to scream for every pose you took on stage. In the story, the man did this during the competition and then got escorted off the stage by security since they thought he was insane. What were the repercussions of this? Was the man in question mad at you afterwards? Do you regret doing this? I had to come back to answer this one. First of all, it was in Munich. I've always loved a good prank, and this was one of my favorites. The guy was a little wild. We mostly pranked the guys who showed up huffing and puffing and acting tough. So this guy was already saying he was gonna win the competition. I told him that the new trend in posing was sound effects. The higher your arms are, the higher the pitch of the scream. As you get lower, you drop your voice. I told him not to worry about the reaction. This was a big thing in America, and England and Germany would catch up. By maybe the fourth scream, he was dragged off stage and thrown out the back door. There were no repercussions for him, except some embarrassment. Another great one was the time we oiled up a tough guy who wanted to squat with us. He literally waited for me by the squat rack for 12 hours on 2 days until I came to squat. He knew I would be there at some point because I squatted that frequently. When I put on 135 to warm up, he called it chicken weight. Then as I gradually moved the weight up to 215, 315, etc., he said we were doing it wrong and we were going to get worn out. When we got to 405, he finally said, "Now you're at my weight." I told him we planned to take photos and asked if he wanted to join us. Of course, there was no camera. So he took off his shirt and we really oiled up his traps. Then we said we should keep working out until it was time for the photo. He only did a half rep. He was one of those guys who did twice the weight he should've and didn't do full reps, but when he came up, because of the oil, the weight was 2 inches lower. On his second rep, the weight slid completely off, and we caught it so he wouldn't get hurt. I said, "You should really warm up next time." After that, he never made fun of us for our warm-up, and he even joined in. I also pulled pranks on my best friends, like the time Franco had just arrived in America and I greeted him with a marijuana cookie. He was fresh off the plane, and I wanted to be a little cautious, so I only gave him half. I took him to my friend's apartment, and they couldn't figure out why we spent an hour lying on the floor laughing. They only knew Franco's reputation as the strongest man in the world, so they were shocked. Franco had a great time, but didn't know why. I finally told him a few days later. So there's a short story of my bodybuilding pranks. Thanks again. I really had a great time. I'll have to pop in from time to time to chat with you guys some more. Who said we had to limit it to 1 hour? I remember hearing that James Cameron did not originally want you for the role of the Terminator, but then you guys went for lunch and he changed his mind. If this is true, what did you say or do to convince him you were right for the role? Huge fan, by the way. Actually, the story is a little different. I wanted the role of Kyle Reese when we went to lunch. I did not want to be the Terminator. I didn't think I'd established myself yet enough as a hero to be a villain. When I started in Hollywood, all they offered was villains. So I wanted to really establish myself first. But I told Jim some of my ideas about how the Terminator should train, not looking while loading weapons, not blinking, no emotions. I said the guy had to train blindfolded. The Terminator, by the way, at that time, was O.J. Simpson. Jim told me I had to do it. He was right. What's the nearest you've ever been to death? I have 2 from movies. On the 6th day, there was a scene where I hide underwater behind embryos. I did a rehearsal with goggles and everything went fine. But when we actually shot, I couldn't see because the water was milky. So I ran out of air and went to the top and realized I didn't know where to get out. I was trapped. Then a hand grabbed me and pulled me out. It was my stunt double, Billy Lucas. He'd been watching from below with a tank and goggles and realized I was in big trouble. On True Lies, you probably remember the horse scene. There was a shot where the horse had to stop at the edge of a building. They built a little ramp to give the horse longer to stop, but when they were measuring the new distance from the ramp to the camera, they dropped the arm of the camera on the horse's nose, and it went crazy, spinning and rearing. There was no rail, and the ramp was only 4 feet wide. I realized it was a bad situation, and I slid off the horse right away, and a stuntman grabbed me. That one was really scary. If the horse stepped a foot the wrong way, we would have fallen 90 feet to a cement floor. These stories are why I will always love stunt people. Of all the things you're famous for, which are you most proud of? Which are you least proud of? I'm most proud that I was smart enough to immigrate to the greatest country in the world where I could accomplish all of my dreams. I'm least proud of the mistakes I made that caused my family pain and split us up. What do you usually eat on your cheat day? Schnitzel, Kaiserschmarrn, ice cream. You really can't go wrong with Austrian food when you want to indulge. So, you're a big guy and an action movie star, but when was the last time you were in an actual physical confrontation? Not that you would promote violence or anything, but shit happens, right? Did you win the fight? A few months ago, I got rear-ended by this guy. He took off and I chased him. I will admit I drove at a slightly excessive speed. I cut him off and 2 guys jumped out of the car looking tough. But when they saw me, they just said, "Oh shit, the Terminator!" They were nice and gave me their information. Did you really mix your protein with whiskey sometimes like you said in a 1977 interview? No, I used schnapps. But yes, I did mix alcohol into some of my protein drinks. Did Andre the Giant really pick you up and carry you back to a table when you tried to pick up the check? Yes, he picked me up. But he set me on a car outside. Smoking a cigar on a tank with Arnold is possibly the manliest thing anyone will ever do. No question. I love to drive the tank, so letting a fan be a part of it is fantastic for me. Did the Predator ever make you shit yourself? It did for me when I was younger. Not because of the Predator, but during the shooting of the movie, I got really sick in Puerto Vallarta. I'll spare you the details, but while I was on a run, the runs hit. I ran to the side of the road, and some cars driving by got quite the show. Hey Arnold, I met you at the UN a few years ago. You walked up to me and said, "How you doing?" And I was immediately frozen in place. Anyways, what's your favorite cigar? Great to meet you. Right now I'm smoking a Partagas Series P number 1.
Hey Arnold, longtime fan. Couple of questions. How do you like having your own range of supplements? Have you been using them? If I take them, will I be able to kill Predator? If I feel like my deltoids are really lacking, any particular dumbbell exercises you feel work for you on the deltoids? I only have access to dumbbells. It's fantastic to have my own line. It's something I've waited a long time to do, and I'm happy to have them formulated with what I consider the best ingredients to recover and rest. I don't know if you could beat the Predator, but you could set a few new records for yourself, and yes, I take them. Perfect. Dumbbells are better than barbells for your delts. First, the Arnold press. Start with a weight you can do 6 times. After 6, pick the next weight down. Work down the rack until you do at least 5 sets. No rest, because picking up the lighter weight should be easy. Once you finish that, do lateral raises the same way. When I did this, I couldn't move my arms after, but it really works. When trying to cut weight after a bulk, what was your best method, in terms of cardio, diet, etc.? Do you believe in ketosis at all? Pretty simple. I would add an extra cardio, running on the beach, swimming, and bicycling. I cut out bread, pasta, and desserts. Definitely wasn't rocket science, but it sure worked. As people get older, their workout tends to change. Are you still doing the same weightlifting you did when you were younger, or has it shifted a certain way? Or have you taken something up like yoga? My workouts have definitely changed. I can't do as many free weight exercises because of injuries. Luckily, the technology has moved forward, and I can find some replacements with machines. Here's an example. I loved barbell curls. Because of my 2 shoulder surgeries, I avoid going heavy, and I use the Preacher curl machine, but I still do my T-bar rows and bent over rows, which I love. What is your opinion on the 5x5 workout? You probably won't like this. When I was gaining strength, I liked to warm up with 10, 8, 6, and 4, and then stay at 2 reps for 5 sets, and then come back to 4, and then 6. After then, the stripping method, just drop the plates and keep doing 4 reps until I couldn't. If you had to start over from scratch, what sort of routine would you do as an absolute beginner? I would do basically the same thing I did. The only thing I would change in a perfect world is I would add the training I couldn't do. Because of the lack of equipment, I would add much more direct calf, rear delt, and hamstring work. We didn't have the machines for those things in Graz. It was all barbells and dumbbells, which was great, but not the best for bodybuilding. The training was a blessing though. It's why I was able to get so big. Plus, I was strong, and my body was ready for the isolation stuff by the time I got to Munich and had that equipment.